Do you want to? Oh no, we don't need. We don't need to count down, do
Yeah,
we?
last time you count you said go or something. And I thought, why is he doing that?
All right. Are we
All right.
going?
Yeah, oh yeah, go ahead.
All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another podcast. Uh, Back here again with Xander.
Yes. 2 weeks in a wait. No, is it only 1 week?
I
No,
think
it's 2 weeks.
it's 2 weeks. I think we did plan to keep doing the pod on Wednesdays. Now it's Thursday. So we're
Which
almost
is
consistent.
those are the same day in my book, depending on your time zones.
Actually,
Those are the
yeah,
same day, so it's all good.
yeah. Due to time zones, we haven't actually violated our contract. So
Right. It's all time zones. Nobody can explain it, so
yeah.
it's okay. Anyway, so
Anyway,
what's up, man?
yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. Last podcast, I
Mm.
did a lot of talking. Answered a lot of questions about the incremental media player. Now I want to turn it
Mm.
back on you, my friend. How have you been recently? What's going on?
Yeah, I've been really good, man. I mean, I really feel like I've hit a stride in a bunch of different things coming together, just in terms of my way of working, way of getting things done for like the past, I don't know, 3 months,
Mm,
something like this. And, you know, these kind of things, I think a mistake a lot of people make is they make some kind of adjustment to their life and it's working very well. And they go, oh my God, this is incredible, right? And so
mm,
they start telling everybody about it.
mm,
And it's like, oh, you got to try this. It works so well, right? And then they can only maintain it for 2 weeks or a month or whatever. But after you've been doing something for 3 months or 6 months, you can sort of assume that it's kind of. I think there's two ways to look at it. One is that there's something at least partially fundamentally sound about it that doesn't cause it to collapse
mm.
immediately.
Yeah.
Because 3 to 6 months is a long enough time. Well, it probably varies depending on your life circumstances, but it's a long enough time to expose it to the types of things you're likely to experience
Mm,
over any given time frame. So if you encounter a very stressful day, that'll probably be within the 3 months. If you sleep very poorly for one day or many days in a row, that will probably be within the 3 months. If you have extra work to do or multiple projects to take care of, that'll probably be within that 3 to 6 month period.
mm.
Those kinds of things, right? So I imagine that sort of delaying victory declarations
Yeah.
on behavior change for some amount of time is a sensible thing to do, because what can happen is, well, at least what I've observed in myself, is that you declare victory too early and then it doesn't work in the exact way you thought, and something about any issue at all, it's like the whole thing crumbles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you hadn't assumed that it was already perfected, you would treat it more like a progressive experiment. You know what I mean?
Mm,
You go, oh, this part doesn't work. I'll swap that in for this. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But since you've declared so early, this is working excellently, once you realize that it doesn't, you just sort of abandon it entirely, which I think is a failure mode. So anyway, all that to say, I've sort of delayed talking about most of these things. I mean, I've mentioned pieces of it, but I really feel like a lot of things are coming together for me. One of those things is that I've become, as surprising as it may seem, it's surprised no one more than me. I've become an early riser. Like, I never in my life thought this would happen.
Mm,
So I've just been going to bed early, waking up early, 6 a.m., sometimes 5:30, but usually between 6 and 7, just whenever my body wakes up. I don't use an alarm or anything. But I just, I never ever imagined that would happen to me. And people who know me don't imagine that would ever happen to me either. I mean, if you see this graph of my sleep times, I've been tracking it for a couple of years with an Aura ring, which, it's not fantastically accurate, but it roughly knows when you went to sleep and when you woke up. If you look at that and you look at my wake up times, there's never a period of like more than 1 week where I woke up, I don't know, before 10 a.m. or 9:30 or something. And then all of a sudden, the past months, it's just boom, all the way down to like 6 a.m., 7 a.m.
yeah.
And it's like, I never expected this. Anyway, I know I'm being long winded about this, but I think it's an important point to emphasize because I made a few assumptions about sleep and sleep timing for significant portions of my life that, just from my recent experience, seemed to be wrong.
Mm,
So I had assumed that as no matter when you go to sleep, it doesn't really, there's no impact on it as long as you just get sufficient sleep. So you just go to sleep and you wake up without an alarm clock.
Mm.
I thought the key variable was letting your body determine when you were going to wake up, right?
Right.
And I no longer believe that to be the case. There must be something, and I don't understand the sleep science well enough to speak properly about this. But just from my experience, I have to infer that there must be something about going to bed early that affects the quality of the sleep and it's seemingly the duration of the sleep. For many years, I've had this problem where I would wake up after only 6 hours or 6.5 or sometimes 7 hours, and I would always get a sensation like I don't feel rested. I should be getting more sleep, but this is when my body woke up. I don't use an alarm clock. So there you go. That's it, right?
Mm.
And whatever. As tends to happen, you wake up, you get out of bed, and sort of the alertness builds within you, and after a couple of hours, you feel like, okay, I'm roughly better now.
Yeah.
That's not to say that the sleep deprivation is gone, but you just sort of move on with it. It's not something you really consider. But I always felt underslept for like most of my life, I guess. I really don't know exactly.
Damn.
But anyway, just to emphasize that again, the time of when you go to sleep, which is to say, going to sleep at 10 p.m. and waking up at 6 a.m. is different than going to sleep at 4 a.m. and just assuming that you'll wake up at 12 p.m. because it's 8 hours, right? I require 8 hours, so regardless of when I go to sleep, I'll just wake up at the same time. I think that's just completely wrong, and I don't know why I assumed that to be that way for so long. In some way, I've kind of known that intellectually for at least a year and a half or 2 years because of sort of my cursory knowledge of the way that sleep pressure builds up.
Mm.
And it made intuitive sense to me that if you missed the window where, for example, your melatonin was building up after the dim light melatonin onset, it made intuitive sense to me that if you stayed awake beyond that point, the structure and possibly the duration of the sleep, whenever you did end up going to sleep, would be different, right? Because you missed that optimum window. So, in some sense, that made that I was aware of that. I knew that, but I didn't act it out, and so I didn't experience it. And so that's one piece of it. And another piece, I don't know what it is. Maybe the quality of the sleep is so significantly better when you go to sleep early or when you sleep on a consistent schedule, which I'm only doing incidentally. I don't try to go to bed at any particular time. I just go to bed when I'm tired. But maybe the quality of the sleep, either because of the earliness or the consistency, is so significantly better that it's altered a bunch of other things in my life. But I get this sense that everything is a little bit easier. And I don't just mean intellectual things, I mean any kind of exertion.
Mm.
Even the commitment to exert myself on a mental task or on a physical task, it just comes a little bit easier. Everything is a touch easier for me. I have more consistent energy throughout the day. And again, I hear very many people who would be described as, advice bloggers speak on these things in very weak terms. And I'm disinclined to give them much credence at all because they are very willing to give their vote of confidence to almost anything, right? So I don't trust that. But I'm saying, as somebody who's quite serious about this stuff, about productivity, about restfulness, about learning, all these things, I can say to you now that going to sleep early and keeping this consistency with my sleep schedule has been a hugely positive shift in my life. And if somebody happens to listen to this and you have a similar wild sleep schedule and you feel like you're chronically sleep deprived, please, if you can, just give this a go. Unfortunately, I don't have much advice about how to arrive at this particular point because for some reason or another, this happened to me spontaneously. I made no intention to do it. I still make no intention to do it. I just do what I want, which happens to be I want to go to bed early and I want to wake up early. I don't know what caused that change. I really don't know. I wish I could say it. But I can go ahead.
No, I think that's the most interesting part about this. Somehow that you
Right.
didn't do anything specifically to change your sleep.
Right.
You just, I mean, is there literally nothing at all? You just sort of converged naturally on just doing exactly the right thing.
Mm. Yeah, so I've been trying to disentangle this a little bit. I can only assume that there must have been something, right? Some sort of precipitating cause that maybe took some time to build up in my psychology or whatever it is, right? So I can only assume it's one of those things. I will speak on one part of it very briefly, which may have played a role. Some months ago, I had some weird heart issue. It was never very serious, but essentially, it seemed like uh, I would just spontaneously become hypertensive and I would almost pass out. I would almost lose consciousness. This happened to me for about a week.
Mm.
It would happen to me a couple of times a day. The first couple of times it happened to me, I was just sort of trying to find someone that I could be around in case I collapsed and I needed them to take me to the hospital, you know. But after that, I sort of figured out what it was, and I not what it was from a medical perspective, just what it was for me, and I was able to deal with that, and eventually it just went away. But it made me realize, okay, I have been much too cavalier with my approach to life. It extends to a bunch of things, but I'll just keep it localized for the sake of not talking for the entire podcast. I apologize.
No, go ahead. No, this is really interesting to me because I want to
Yeah,
fix my sleep as well.
that's part of the reason I'm saying it, and partly because this is so important that if someone can improve their life even marginally because of this, I consider it pretty significant. So
Mm.
that's sort of why I'm willing to sacrifice the conversational nature. But I do apologize for that. But anyway, just to finish up that point, it went away after about a week. But I just thought, man, I have to take this more seriously because up until this point, and my description of this will sound kind of manic, but there was no such quality to it. I mean, if you knew me at that point, you would have known there was nothing wild about it from a psychological perspective. I was just abusing my sleep and things like this. So I was going to bed, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and sometimes I would wake up at 10 or 11. And I was just sort of working a lot, and I was working on things that were very exciting to me, and I never felt like out of control with it. It just was like, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get more done. I have trouble going to sleep. These not generally trouble going to sleep, but if I stop working or stop learning something to go to bed early, I would have trouble. But
Mm.
anyway, the point is, I started taking things more seriously after that because I realized my youth, and forgive me for using that term because I just think it's such a silly thing to point out, especially in this context. But that doesn't preclude me from any health problems and from having to be concerned about that. And so part of it was that. And I don't know what that did to me. I think it may have permeated my psychology in terms of treating my life seriously
Mm.
in multiple components. And one of those was health. I've altered my diet pretty significantly as well because I don't want to get diabetes or anything else.
Mm.
And just for the record, I'm not like overweight or anything. It's just I never I never ate particularly healthily. So that was a component of it. But anyway, just all that to say, I think that was part of it. Another part of it, just coincidentally, I bought a laptop specifically for um, browsing Twitter or YouTube or Reddit or any distracting website. And it's sort of hard to tie this in together. I don't know what role it played, but I assume it may have had some role in it. Because now, anytime I do anything non productive on the computer, it's always on this laptop. Whereas prior to that, it would all be on my work computer. So my work computer and my play computer were one computer. And
Mm.
oftentimes the internet is what would keep me up. As much as I would like to believe that it was only because I was constantly working, that's just not true. It just can't be true. There was a lot of times where I would, you know, it would the precipitating cause was some distracting website or whatever. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think what may have played a role in it is this visual and spatial separation between productivity and time wasting in the form of transferring it to a laptop that's distinct from my work. So now, if I look and I see that the laptop is open, I know I'm not being productive. Does that make sense? So because there's something I can see in my visual field, something that can tell me without a doubt, I'm here, so I'm not productive. You know what I mean? It just made it much easier for me to disengage and have an awareness of where my time was going. And now, if it's late at night and the laptop is open, I know that there's no point and I can just go to bed. You know what I mean? I
Sorry,
while James recovers that, I'll just keep talking.
Sorry. My entire mic just fell off the fucking desk.
It's okay, buddy. It's okay. Anyway, so yeah, I think that I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah.
But
it's good.
Anyway, so I think that must have played a role in it because it just makes it a little bit easier for me to disengage at the nighttime and go to bed. So those are two things that I think may have played a role. And I guess the third thing was probably I was just tired of being tired. I hate that I use that phrase. That's such a oh my god.
Dude,
I hate that I use that
you
phrase.
spoke so articulately and so coherently for like
Ah.
10 minutes straight, and then you said, "I'm tired of being tired."
Oh god. I hate that I said that.
No, dude,
I'm sorry.
No, it's the viewers you have to apologize to, not me, my friend.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I found that really interesting because I've definitely struggled with my sleep as well, and I was when you were speaking about like having a really terrible sleep schedule and then it even impacting your health to a certain extent as well. It made me think of like when people have like a near-death experience and then it completely changes their outlook on life. And I was wondering maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe for any change in your life, maybe the best way to, and I'm kind of saying this jokingly, but I also do after I've said it, I also do think that it could be like a way to do it as well. Like if you hit rock bottom almost, for example, in your diet, if you just binge on a bunch of crap for like a week, that might sort of tip you over the edge into wanting to eat more healthily, because you, especially if you begin to see negative effects within that week of like an unhealthy lifestyle, then it's gonna become more clear to you that you're damaging your health or whatever. Like it's like it's sort of similar to what we discussed ages ago with learning. Like lots of people don't get into learning because like the progress is so slow that you just don't realize it's happening to you. But it's sort of the same with any sort of lifestyle thing as well. Like a bad diet, it just sort of you do it for a while, you don't really notice suddenly that your life has become worse. It just gradually gets worse and worse, and you gradually start seeing health problems. If you don't suddenly have like this big discontinuity between I feel great and healthy and now I feel like dog shit, then you don't necessarily tie them together. You don't necessarily, your body doesn't tell you this, you have to change this now because this is clearly what is making you feel terrible. So yeah,
exactly.
I wonder if it's good to like, it's almost good to hear bottom in a sense. Like I remember when I had really bad sleep when I did the loop around the clock, like getting up in the night and then sleeping during the day and then slowly going to bed later and later until I had a normal sleep schedule again. It's almost like going through the loop in a sort of condensed period of time almost made it so clear to me that this is a terrible way to live that I just had to change it. It made it completely necessary to change it. Whereas if I'd gone through that experience over the period of like 6 months, then maybe I wouldn't, because I don't know, the adjustment is too slow for you to really notice what's going on.
Right, exactly. And first of all, I just want to say that resonates a lot with me. I really think that's true, because so many insidious things don't manifest in a negative way until it's much too late, until it's very ingrained in your behavior, which is what you're saying. And even worse, well, I don't know whether it's even worse, it's hard to tell, but similarly bad is that a lot of positive behaviors in life don't manifest their results for some amount of time. It might
Yeah.
be a month or 3 months or a year or whatever. Like if you start working out, right? You're not going to work out and then instantly become more fit or become more healthy. You might get some marginal benefits of like clarity of mind momentarily or whatever.
Mm.
But it's just a fact, or as close as a fact that we can get in terms of this. If you look at the literature, it does seem that consistent exercise is correlated with better outcomes in depression, anxiety, in cognitive abilities, in sleep quality, in longevity, long-term health, health span, all these things, right? So if you look at it that way, physical exercise is pure good, right? It's nothing but upside, really. Only thing is that it's hard and it takes time.
Mm.
But that difficulty of it, that experiential difficulty of it, puts us off of doing it consistently, at least a lot of people, because those benefits are not short term. Now, there are some short term benefits that, if you do it consistently, will manifest within probably a couple of weeks. Probably the sleep benefits might, and the mental benefits probably come up pretty quick. But anyway, the point is there are a lot of things like that, and meditation is like that.
Mm.
Even things like being around people you care about. It is true to say that if you don't spend time with people you care about for a few days, nothing that bad will happen.
Mm.
But if you don't do that for 3 months, all of a sudden your life will be in disarray.
Yeah.
At least for most people.
Definitely.
Like things like this, they build up in some sort of weird, crazy way that can be so hard to perceive.
Yeah.
And I wonder if part of the reason it's so hard to perceive, just to relate this to learning a little bit, is that you just sort of forget.
Yes, exactly.
It's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was going to say that I propose that we call this problem like the boiling the frog problem or something like that. Or I don't know. Or maybe like the frog in the sauna in terms of the good side. Because like
right.
it applies to both the bad things in life and the good things.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense. But you know what I mean.
That's good. I like that.
And I'm wondering, basically what's happening is that at each fraction of time or whatever, at each second, the frog is comparing its current temperature to like a second ago, right? Rather than comparing his current temperature to like maybe 30 seconds ago or something like that. So it seems to be a memory problem. The frog doesn't retain its sensations of heat for long enough, but maybe if it was using spaced repetition or something. But yeah, it does seem to be like a memory problem of some sort. So how can we solve this somehow? You need to be able to basically remember how you felt, let's say a few months ago, and you need to be able to compare that with your current state. So how could you go about doing that?
Yeah, I've actually thought about this a good deal. One of the reasons that I think it's difficult is just from a subjective perspective, and somewhat counterintuitively, I suspect that the less of a rationalist you consider yourself to be, and I don't much like that term, but let's just say it that way, right? Just for ease of communication. The less of a rationalist you consider yourself to be, the easier it might be for you to say, well, I started working out and things got better for me, therefore it was the working out. Whereas if you're a rationalist, you might say, maybe the reason I started working out was because I was already feeling better. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna get yourself in these mental loops where you're not ever sure of the causal relationship of anything. And so you can never have true confidence that some change resulted in some positive or negative outcome. And so you just experience it less viscerally when you make a commitment to continue or discontinue some behavior. Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense?
Do you mean like the rationalist in the sense of like the rationalist community, or the people who sort of advocate
just somebody who tries to be rational about their life? Like you try to figure out, it's this correlation causation thing where you do something new and you try to figure out, like, first of all, is this really helping in any way? Like, is my life better than before I started this? And if it is the reason that my life better because I'm doing this thing? Or you can say the same in reverse for negative behaviors, right? So the point of what I'm saying is, if you constantly try so hard to disentangle or figure out with some degree of certainty the causal relationship of things. So, did I start working out and then I started feeling better
Mm.
because working out makes you feel better? Or was the original reason I started working out was because I was already feeling motivated, I was already feeling better, and now I'm just mapping on that positive feeling to the working out itself because those memories have merged and I lost the line and all these things, right? So
Mm.
whereas if you're not trying to be rational, you might just say to yourself, "Oh, well, I started working out. I'm feeling pretty good. There we go. Working out is helping me a lot."
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Okay,
You
okay.
treat things, and that's not an insult. I actually think that's probably a good way to be, but you treat things much more simply. So you feel the connection between whatever behavior and the negative or positive outcome much more viscerally just due to your confidence that one thing caused the other. Does that resonate? I mean, I'm speculating. I don't know this to be true. I've seen no papers on it, but that's my intuition about it.
Um, I think I see where you're coming from. Uh, like it's almost like if something's going well, don't ask any questions and don't try and analyze it or
Right.
overanalyze it too
Right.
much. And
Right.
I think I think it's a good point because actually it seems like that's almost like what you did with your sleep. Like when you didn't go from having bad sleep to analyzing the problem and studying it and then instituting a bunch of changes
Right.
and stuff. You just sort of
Right.
changed and kept doing the thing um that like you found to be beneficial, or
Right.
you you sort of adjusted without having to logically go through and rationalize every single decision you made and
Right.
plan. You didn't plan and then pursue it or anything like
Right.
that. And actually, I think that's often when, I definitely feel like that's often when my lifestyle changes are most successful, when I don't actually plan and
Mm.
overanalyze and like for example, I I've been able to run like pretty consistently, except when I'm injured, and I've
Mm.
never ever like done any sort of effort into like planning my running or tracking it or anything like that. I literally just step out the door at the same time roughly every day and just start running, and that's it. And it's so
Right.
there's so little thought or yeah, just analysis that goes into the decision to run. Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like with lots of these with lots of like lifestyle changes, and it probably extends to other things as well. It's like you're almost uh just better off not overanalyzing anything and just doing stuff. I think it's
Mm.
like that in learning as well. I think that's maybe a part of why was he came up with this pleasure of learning thing. I think it applies to that as well. It's like you're not setting yourself a curriculum and then going through each thing one by one and analyzing it every
Right.
step. What's the best thing? What's the best next step for me to
Right.
take? You literally just do what's interesting or enjoyable to you, which doesn't require like active interrogation of your mind and logically trying to work out what's interesting or whatever. It's just it's like a primal instinct that you have that you don't have to use your system two or whatever Kahneman calls it.
Mm.
You just use your system one.
Mm. Exactly. Exactly. And taking advantage of that is so crucial because suppose with your running or with my sleep, if I had said I'm going to go to bed at 10 p.m. every night, right? If that was a goal that I made, like I'm going to check this off as a habit,
Yeah.
every day, I would have failed. And
Mm.
because I would have failed that habit, maybe I would have failed the entire thing, right? Maybe I would have just given up on trying to fix my sleep.
Yeah.
Whereas because I don't care about the specifics, I'm just trying to sleep better.
Yeah.
Almost anything is good because I'm just trying to be better than I was, right? So if you're not running at all, just an idea in your mind like, "Oh, I'd like to run more." That's better than some specific thing where I run 7 days a week. I run 3 miles a day, 7 days a week, right? Because if you skip any day, now all of a sudden you feel like you failed. Whereas
Mm.
if your only goal is I'm trying to run more, then all you have to do to succeed is just sort of run sometimes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just when you
and
feel
people
like it, you
love to
just
feel
run.
successful. Exactly. Exactly. And then when you do run, you go, "Oh man." You start to develop the identity of somebody who runs
Mm.
because you're not even setting a goal for it. This is just something you do. You know what I mean?
Dude, I wonder if this could work. Like, Uh, so it's not what we've been discussing is like how you can't really like plan and like rationally carry out these sort of behavior changes. You just the best way to do it at least is to just sort of do it naturally and not even think about it, right? So maybe a way to do it is to maybe you only try and plan it for one day and then you just go on autopilot afterwards. So you literally just you institute this behavior change on day one, and then day two you almost forget. You don't try and rationalize or logically work out what you're going to do or plan anything at all, and you just like maybe that's a way to do it. So you plan it the first day, and then the rest is just completely autopilot style.
Yeah, I don't know. I will say that that doesn't immediately jump out to me as something that would work really well. I mean, it might. I'm not sure. I'll just say a couple of related observations I made, and maybe that'll spark something in your mind of a potential solution. I've noticed that I have some resistance to writing down tasks that I'm looking forward to on a to-do list, right? Somehow, I don't know what the mechanism is. I don't really understand it, but something about the act of writing a task down makes it feel like a chore instead of, oh, I was really looking forward to that. You know what I mean? Does that resonate with you?
I don't think I've personally experienced it, but it makes sense what you're saying, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether that's a common feeling or not. But even writing something down on a task list, I've developed this weird, maybe it's superstitious, maybe it's not even real. But I've developed this weird thing where I'm like, I don't even want to write it down because I'm a little bit scared that it's gonna make me not want to do it. You know what I mean?
Okay. So it's like
I don't know whether that's accurate or not, but it's a feeling I have.
okay. So you sort of poison the thing that you're enjoying by putting it on the task list. Maybe you
Right,
should have two
exactly.
different task lists, like one for stuff you enjoy, one for stuff you hate.
I don't know. It's like I've heard some people say this idea of maybe it's called a reverse calendar or something, or a reverse schedule. Either way, didn't seem like a very good name at the time. But it's this idea where you plan out your leisure and everything, and only like look at where you have open gaps that you don't want to be doing other stuff. I think that's the rough idea. But to me, if you plan out your leisure, something about the planning of it
Yeah.
makes it less enjoyable. I don't know what it is really. It's maybe it's like not really a real thing, and if I just committed to it, it would make no difference. I don't really know, but yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe it's like maybe part of the enjoyment that you get from doing those tasks that you enjoy is like uh deciding that you're going to do it spontaneously. That's almost part of it.
Mm,
So you're like,
mm,
yeah, then it's being controlled by your subconscious. Then your subconscious says to you, like, surfaces the idea that, oh, yeah, you've got this thing you want
right,
to do. Then you're like, oh, yeah, I do actually want to do that. And then you go and do it.
right,
But
right.
if you schedule it, it's not necessarily like you might just schedule it at the wrong time, like when you're not really wanting to do that kind of thing. So,
Exactly, exactly. Well, think about. Actually, I just want to say this really quickly because I think it might relate to
mm,
what you're going to say next. Think about what what it means to schedule leisure time, right? Either you schedule it too early, in which case you don't want to stop working yet and it
yeah,
feels bad to stop anyway,
yeah.
or you schedule it too late, which means that you had to power through your work past the point when you would have liked to take a break. What
Mm,
are the odds that you're going to schedule it perfectly? You
yeah.
could eventually calculate it or calibrate it and get it sort of mostly right. But doing that on the first shot seems very unlikely. Anyway, go ahead with what you were going to say.
Oh no, I don't think I was going to say anything, but you've given me an idea now. Like, remember, it reminds me of like doing pomodoros. Like, it's
Mm,
25 minutes, 5 minutes off, and then you do a couple of those rounds for a bit, and
right,
then you get a
right.
longer break. But you don't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily align with actually what's optimal for you. Uh,
Mm,
I guess it's when like planning stuff like that and just scheduling your work and leisure time works when I don't know, when does it work? Like when you've got like I don't know, when if you just left yourself to your own devices, you would literally never
Mm.
do any work, I guess. In that case, then maybe it's better to use the sort of Pomodoro style. But otherwise, I feel
Yeah,
like you end up just poisoning your enjoyment of your leisure time, and also I don't think you work as well.
I don't know. I sort of think that the Pomodoro or having some kind of notion of a work session of a predefined duration
Mm,
is probably good, or at least it can be good for a lot of circumstances. Probably
mm,
depends a lot on the types of work you do.
mm,
But I think there's something about the brain which eventually develops a rhythm of things you do. So if every morning you do 2 hours of work of a particular type, something about the brain will sort of reorient so that it expects that to happen.
mm,
And so those 2 hours, your brain is primed to do that. And then it sort of knows, again, I'm speaking in very broad terms because I don't understand the neuroscience.
mm.
So whatever, dismiss it if you want based on that, but I don't think that's sensible. But uh, your brain sort of knows that it's going to come to an end, and so it sort of calibrates to that. I think it's sort of like physical exercise. If you constantly work out at a similar time, similar intensity, that's what your body is sort of used to. You can push yourself and get yourself used to more, or you can pull it back and your body will reacclimate to a lower level of intensity. So I think it's sort of like that. And another component I think is pretty interesting, which most people don't employ, at least as far as I can tell. A lot of people use the Pomodoro method to convince themselves to get started with a work session, and then they have no intention of taking the break when the 25 minutes is up,
Mm.
which I think might be an anti-pattern because if you look at the kind of Hemingway advice to stop when you know what will happen next, to sort of maintain your enthusiasm, that can happen many times a day in the form of Pomodoro. If you get into the rhythm of it, right, and you really don't want to take a break at the end of the 25 minutes, that implies that there's something inherent about the work in this moment that is propelling you to keep going. And so, why not take that break and you'll have that energy to power you and start at the next moment, right? And
Mm.
maybe in the 5 minutes, you'll think of a new idea or whatever, which will be even better, make your work session more productive.
Mm.
And on the flip side of it, if you're not feeling very productive and you feel like, oh, this is really not going well, then all you have to do is finish out the 25 minutes and then try to refresh yourself in that 5 or 10 or 15-minute break, and then you can come back and do it again. So I think it can work both for good work sessions and bad ones by the same mechanism but different outcomes.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't done Pomodoros in a while. Maybe I should go back to it.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know really. I mean, I do think this advice of, especially at the level of a day, if you stop your work when you roughly know what will happen next, or when you still have ideas, when you still have that creative energy,
Mm.
then when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to do anything to get yourself started
Yeah,
because the enthusiasm is already there. You know what I mean?
that's definitely true. I definitely found that with coding. Like, it's always better to, and I've never done this, I don't think, but I always think to myself, it would be better to leave something easy and that you know you could get done and you would enjoy it at the end of the day,
Right.
so that when you
Right.
wake up the next day, you don't feel any sort of, I don't know, trepidation or whatever about starting your coding. Because often, like, what will happen is there'll be something at the end of the day which I know I can get done, and then I'll like push myself to finish that, end up
Mm,
sleeping too late,
mm,
and then wake up uh, with something like really hard to do next, and also
right.
having slept
Exactly.
really shittily. So,
Exactly. And a lot of that wrecks the day because I've found, maybe this isn't always true, but if you can sort of do really well in the first couple of hours of the day, it seems to change the character of the entire day. And
mm,
so if your first couple hours, or let's say your first 30 minutes, depending on your level of productivity, right? If those things are spent trying to convince yourself, just get started on this hard task, it'll
mm,
be fine. That's going to be worse than if it was you spring out of bed because you can't wait to continue that task you left undone last night.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely true.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know practically how to implement that. I don't seem particularly good at it myself, but these days, for the past few months, I do notice that because I just want to go to bed earlier. I notice that much more often there will be stuff undone at the night that I then want to do the next day. So take that with a grain of salt. I haven't noticed that it's a massive benefit, but it seems like a benefit.
I think I think maybe that's part of what makes like doing IR and your items in the morning like a good idea, because as long as you actually enjoy like the content that you're learning,
Mm,
uh,
mm,
and as long as like your formulation is okay, so you're not just powering through a bunch of like leeches that you
mm,
can't
mm,
cram into your brain,
mm.
then you can pretty much guarantee that you'll enjoy those sessions like pretty
Right.
consistently, and probably more consistently than any other task, I'd say. Like
Mm,
I pretty much know that when I get up in the morning, I'm gonna like enjoy doing my items and like doing a little bit of IR probably more than anything
mm.
else. And I never get up and feel like, oh fuck, I've got to do my items, you know? And so
Right.
that's why I think it's like a good thing to put there, because then at least you have one thing at the beginning of the day where you're like
Mm.
uh pumped up to do it, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If you can find one thing that's sort of a consistent thing in your life that you can do every morning that makes you feel like you've gotten the day off to a good start,
Mm.
I think that's such an ace. And in this case, but I think it's predicated on a few things. Like it probably doesn't work if you're not consistently making new items
Oh
because you'll get
yeah.
very bored.
Yeah.
And it, like you say, it doesn't work if you're not very good at it yet, to the degree that you fail most of your items, or it doesn't work if the items aren't things that you don't aren't things that you care about. So it's probably those things. But assuming those things, yeah, I think that's definitely true. And there have been periods in my life where I wake up and I do 2 hours of incremental reading in the morning. The rest of the day just has a different character to it because there's something really creative about it. You never really know what's going to happen next, and your thoughts are always determined. I don't know the time scale of this, but most of your thoughts are determined by your input. It would seem like if you consume a lot of nonsense because you check Twitter in the morning, then somehow that's going to alter your thoughts for the day. Whereas
Mm.
if you consume a lot of new, interesting, inspiring stuff because your incremental reading is curated to the stuff you like, that's going to change it beyond the productivity impact. There's some kind of inspirational, creative impact.
Mm. I agree. I agree. Sustainable
Yeah.
reward that makes you feel good.
There you go. Sustainability, that is the key, man.
Yeah.
That's just to relate it to the other thing and wrap it all up. You have to do things in life that are sustainable. If you can't sustain some way of being productive or way of learning or way of being with somebody or whatever it is, I just don't see how it's just not a good way to be. I've tried to be that way. Like I basically before I fixed my sleep, it was on a week to week basis. It was like if I can just get through this next few days
Mm.
with this, eventually I'll get better, right? But it was like that's not a way to be. You have to be sustainable with it. If you can't sustain 12 hours of productivity a day, but you could sustain 6 or whatever it might be for you, it's better to do 6 consistently than 12 once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
Definitely.
always true. It's always true. So it's that way with everything. You have to aim for sustainability. Think long term in your life. I'm not saying don't go for quick results. Try to get as much good outcome in the short term as you can, but not at the expense of sustainability.
Mm.
Because there's always ways. Like for example, you could take drugs. I would imagine there's some drugs, Adderall, something like this, that could allow you to be very productive for some degree of time, which is not very long usually. You build up a tolerance to any drug like this or whatever. So I would imagine it's maybe a month, right? But if you're looking at it on a longer scale, like I'm trying to be hyper productive over the next 40 years,
Mm.
then it almost doesn't really matter about the degree of improvement. You just have to have some. You know what I mean? When you think of things
Yeah.
longer term, it doesn't matter whether you're getting 1% better every day or every week or every year because it's a long enough time that it'll all add up to something amazing. So that's that's the way I've been trying to look at it, and treating your life seriously, even as a younger person. That's been a useful frame for me.
Beautiful. All right,
There we
guys.
go.
Well, hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you are sitting there feeling like, man, I wish I was on the podcast too. Well, maybe you could be. Send us a message.
Yes,
We'd love to talk to you. And
yeah, and just like James, I just won't let you say anything. I'll just talk the whole time, and it'll be great. You'll love it.
Man, that was great. I definitely really enjoyed listening to the sleep experience and stuff. Like, I hope I can somehow, I don't know, absorb your success with the sleep into my lifestyle somehow.
Thank you. That's great. You're very gracious.
You know, it's probably brewing in my subconscious right now, but I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to rationally think about it. I'm just going to let it happen.
There you go. I love to hear that. That's beautiful.
All right, guys. See you next time.
All right. See ya.